Every second, the internet creates something new. Stories, ideas, and moments the world can't stop watching.
The next few seconds might completely change how you see the internet. Welcome to Internet Video Center. We bring you the most interesting, surprising, and useful stories from across the internet. Enjoyed this video, subscribe now, because the next video might reveal something even more surprising. Welcome to the IVC Podcast. Stories, ideas, truth. Subscribe now and join the conversation.
All right, let's open the case file. The subject, Alcatraz Federal Penitentiary. You probably know it as The Rock. For almost 30 years, it was the end of the line, a maximum security fortress sitting on an island surrounded by the freezing, brutal waters of the Pacific Ocean. It was designed from the ground up to be completely unbreakable.
And you have to understand, the security here was absolute. We're talking hardened steel bars, guard towers that could see everything, and at least a dozen head counts a day. Over the years, 36 men tried to get out in 14 separate attempts, and you know what happened? Almost all of them were caught or just vanished into the bay. Escape wasn't just unlikely, it was considered impossible.
But then came the morning of June 12th, 1962. And the impossible? Well, it happened. The alarms went off. The prison went into total lockdown, and that's when the call came in to us at the Bureau. Our investigation was just beginning, into a mystery that, let's be honest, still fascinates people to this day.
So where do you even start with a case like this? You go right back to the beginning, to the exact moment of discovery. Picture it. It's just a routine morning bed check. A guard walks the tier, checking the cells. But something's wrong. A few of the inmates, they aren't moving. They aren't responding. 3 men were just gone.
Because in their beds, this is what the guards found. Dummy heads. I mean, look at this. They were ingeniously made from plaster, paint, and even real human hair they'd collected from the prison barber shop. They looked so real that they fooled the guards making their rounds all night long. And that one simple, clever trick bought them a head start of several critical hours.
So, who were our missing men? We formally identified them as John Anglin, his brother Clarence, and a man named Frank Morris. Now, these 3 knew each other from other prisons, and our intelligence pointed straight at Morris. The guy had a genius-level IQ. He was, without a doubt, the mastermind behind this whole thing.
We were notified right away. By the time our agents arrived on the island, Alcatraz was locked down tighter than ever. So our search for clues had to start right where the trail went cold, inside their cells. The first question was the big one. How in the world did they get out of a locked room? And that's when we found it. At the back of each cell, the air vent. It was just gone. They had spent months painstakingly drilling a bunch of tiny holes around the vent's metal cover until they could just knock out an entire chunk of the concrete wall. That was it. That was their exit. A secret doorway into an unguarded utility corridor that ran behind the cells. Now, our first huge break in the case didn't come from a piece of evidence. It came from a person. A 4th conspirator named Alan West. Turns out, he was supposed to go with them, but he couldn't get his own vent open in time. He was left behind. And lucky for us, he decided to talk. And through him, we started to reconstruct their entire incredible 6-month plan.
West laid it all out for us. He told us about the tools. The patience it took is just hard to wrap your head around. Their main tool was a homemade drill. And get this, they built it out of the motor from a broken vacuum cleaner. With that and a few other rough tools, they chipped away at the concrete night after night. And the noise, it was perfectly masked by the prison's daily music hour. Unbelievable. And it gets even more audacious. Their escape route led them upstairs to a secret workshop they'd set up on the roof of the cell block, right above the guards' heads. And up there, they built their getaway vehicle, a 6 by 14-foot raft and life vests, all made from more than 50 stolen raincoats. They even used the prison's own hot steam pipes to vulcanize or seal the seams to make them waterproof.
So, okay, let's walk through the actual escape. The night of June 11th, 1962. After all those months of secret, meticulous work, they were ready. The dummy heads were tucked into bed, all their gear was stashed and ready to go. This was it. It was go time.
First, they slipped through those holes they'd made and into the utility corridor. Then they climbed up a network of pipes, 30 feet, all the way to the top of the cell house. Up on the roof, they forced open a ventilator, slid down the bakery smokestack to the ground level, hopped a fence, and made their way to the shore of the island.
Then, under the cover of total darkness, they inflated that homemade raft and they shoved off into the cold, choppy waters of the San Francisco Bay. 1 minute they were there, and the next, they were just gone, vanished into the night.
So they were off the island. For them, Phase 1 was complete. But for us, the investigation was just kicking into high gear. We launched one of the biggest manhunts you've ever seen. A massive operation with the Coast Guard, the Bureau of Prisons. We had boats, helicopters, everything, scouring the bay and the nearby islands for days on end, just looking for any sign of them.
But what we found, well, it just made the whole thing more of a mystery. We found things like this small, homemade paddle. And when you look at this, and then you think about the immense freezing power of that bay, you start to realize the odds they were up against. I mean, it was just astronomical.
Over the next few days, the water gave up a few more clues. We found a packet of letters, sealed up in rubber to keep them dry. We found more little bits of wood from their paddles, and pieces of rubber that probably came from the raft. We even found one of their life vests washed up on Cronkite Beach. But of the men themselves, or the main raft, nothing. Absolutely zero trace.
So where did all of this lead us? What was our official conclusion? For 17 years, we worked this case. We followed thousands of leads. The story, of course, became a legend. Everyone had a theory about how they survived. But our job isn't to chase legends. It's to follow the evidence. And the cold, hard evidence pointed to a much more final conclusion.
You know, the whole thing really boils down to this one question. Did they make it, or did they perish in the bay? The public, of course, wanted to believe they survived, that they pulled off the impossible. But our investigation, well, it concluded that they met their end in those waters.
And here's why we believe that. First, the physical conditions. That water is frigid. The currents are powerful enough to sweep you right out to the Pacific. Second, their plan on the mainland. Our informant said they planned to steal a car and some clothes. No thefts like that were ever reported. Third, their families didn't have the money to help hide them. And most importantly, in all the years that followed, there was never a single credible sighting of these men. Not one.
So, based on all of this evidence, on December 31st, 1979, the FBI officially closed its active investigation. We turned the outstanding warrants over to the U.S. Marshal Service, and they technically still have the case open. But for us, our part was done.
Officially, the men drowned in the San Francisco Bay during their escape attempt. But without finding any bodies, there's always that little shadow of a doubt, isn't there? They're the only men to ever break the rock and just disappear. So, while our files on the case are closed, that question still kind of haunts the history of Alcatraz. What really happened to them?